Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 New Jersey International Film Festival Q&A series. Today we have a wonderful panel set up of experimental filmmakers from all around the world, and we're going to be spending the next 25 minutes with them talking about their work and the screening that we will be doing at the film festival. But before I introduce them to you, I just would like to know that we are celebrating our 30th anniversary. We started this festival back in 1996. We got a challenge grant to develop an international film festival program because we normally do screenings in the academic year and we're called the New Jersey Film Festival. But we thought, can we show Iranian films at 12 noon in New Brunswick, New Jersey? And very quickly realized that that was not a possibility because we're not a major metropolitan center. So we ended up doing it on the weekends. So we've been doing this for 30 years, and the 30th annual festival will be taking place between May 30th and June 13th. The competition part of the festival will be up through June 8th, and most of the screenings are on the weekends. We're still a hybrid festival, which means that we show the films online and in person in most cases, and you'll be able to check out the films online for 24 hours on their show date. And the in-person screenings are either at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening. So, okay, today we have an experimental film panel, and I'm going to scroll down so I make sure I have all the information in front of me. And today we have the filmmaker of the film Elemental, Marie Gayeski. She's from Panama City, Florida, and she's actually in a hotel room waiting to fly back from a festival in Canada. We have Jeremy Drummond. He's from Richmond, Virginia, and his wonderful film is called Monument. And then we have the Zorm Collective, which consists of Bo, Jeff, and Tesse, who are below. And they're from Belgium, I think, right? From Brussels. Is that correct? And then we also have Kamila Kuc, who is originally from Poland, but I know she lived in the UK and now she's living out in the West Coast. Is that correct, Kamila?
Yeah, I've just moved to Seattle 2 weeks ago
Oh my
before my
God.
roommates
So
took
we
me
have
from there.
everybody from all over. Welcome, all of you. I love all of your films. I'm an experimental filmmaker too. So I always sit in on the experimental film panel, and we're always looking for really unique and original works. And all of your films are different. Jeremy Drummond uses, I guess, an optical printer to layer images over one another. Marie's film is silent and also has some layering involved, but is really beautiful silent film that uses water as a main theme. Camila's film is very personal and also uses some printing, optical printing of sorts, to kind of merge images. And the Zorm Collective has an amazing soundtrack and also combines animation with live action. All right, so that's my kind of basic introduction. Jeremy, tell us a little bit more about your film since you're closest to me in these squares that we have.
Um, uh, I had been shooting footage for quite a while, just like I always do, and so I've developed an archive of film and video footage, and I had been recording out at this place called President's Park, which was a park in Virginia with all the president's heads from George W. Bush George Washington up until George W. Bush, so 220 years of presidents.
Hmm.
And the park was made up of these 20-foot busts. And it, I guess, like after a few years went bankrupt. And when they were going to level the land, they moved all the monuments. The person who was leveling the land moved all the monuments to his personal property. And so they're just left abandoned in a field, rotting and falling apart. And so I was shooting Super 8 footage there. And then during the pandemic, was shooting a lot of footage down on Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia, where protesters had reclaimed a lot of the Confederate monuments and had transformed them into sort of these living community spaces. And so I was thinking about these two sets of footage that I had collected, and was thinking about sort of what the president's head symbolizes, like 220 years of white supremacy,
Hmm.
and what was happening with the Confederate monuments during the Black Lives Matter protests during the pandemic, and started thinking about kind of comparing and contrasting those two things. And yeah, I mean that's basically the content of it. And the Super 8 footage is processed with a Mortensage process, chemical process,
Hmm.
and then all of the footage at the Confederate monuments on Monument Avenue was shot by myself on video or sourced from other places
Hmm.
um, online. And so I was thinking about relationships between film as a medium and video as a medium, particularly its democratic potential
Hmm.
in digital distribution networks and
So
sort
your
of
film is kind of a hybrid too, a kind of combination of video and film.
yeah.
And that's kind of nice because we're a hybrid festival too. And Marie's film also has this kind of merging of imagery. Tell us a little bit about your film, Marie.
My film is actually called Elemental Me, and it came about after um, uh, I started thinking about it. My family was through a Category 5 hurricane in 2018, and then I entered graduate school in 2020, but had to take a 2-year leave of medical apps, a medical leave of medical leave, and because of genetic illness that was first discovered in 2017. So I had 2 years to try to process what was going on during this absence, uh, try to process the trauma of the hurricane and the genetic illness because it became increasingly worse.
Mm.
So I started going to the beach, and I started thinking about the platonic solids in their elemental form, which was ether, fire, water, earth,
Mm.
and air. And that's how the film came about, and the patterning of the scans, my medical imagery, and the patterning of the waves and the sand and the shadows of the plants. And light is a very important element in the film as well, because it creates a lot of the patterning. And I wanted to expand it to the cosmos,
Mm.
to take it from the microscopic of our neural pathways to to the expanse of the cosmos, just to show that um, we're really just elemental.
Very cool. From the micro to the macro. It
Yes.
reminds me a little bit of that the Eames film, The Powers of Ten. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that
Mhm.
film, where you go from the infinitesimal to the tiny and back again. It's really some interesting parallels, and I didn't really realize that there were scans that were kind of superimposed. Although we do see some imagery of people in your film too, very subliminal at times. And it's really quite beautiful. And I think that segs really nicely into Kamila's film, which also has a kind of imprint of her own body and mind in this film. Tell us about your film, Kamila.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you for having me. Yeah, my film is sort of sprang from my paternal grandmother's story. I've interviewed her shortly before she passed away, and she just told me, a couple of sort of details, a couple of events, about a couple of events in her life in more detail than she had before. And I've been sitting on this footage, and then when she died, one day I was going through it, and I've experienced her voice as being very powerful. And I thought, wow, what an archive to work with. And I have been studying for the last 2 years. I'm retraining as a psychotherapist right now.
Mm.
So I've been doing a lot of research into how trauma resides in the body.
Mm.
So of course, it's kind of the body keeps the score, right? Is the phrase now that everybody knows. So I've been really interested in, of course, the notion of intergenerational trauma, but how I can reframe it more into a emotional inheritance
Mm.
as opposed to just trauma, because my grandmother was also a very resilient, very strong woman.
Mm.
So there was a lot of positivity that I think was passed on to me. And Marie, as you were just talking there about beach and water in my film, as in a lot of my previous films, the water is kind of a recurring theme, and it is a place of healing.
Mm.
Yes.
So I think that was also very important for me, that was there. And I've shot it on Super 8, and I hand processed my own film with Caffeinol. So that was also something, the part of the process that I really liked, because there's a lot of serendipity, in trying to sort of figure out what's going to come back to you. So yeah.
It's a beautiful film and very personal for me
Thank you.
too, because my wife, her parents experienced the same trauma of the Nazi occupation of Ukraine, and the story is very similar and very sad at the same time. But
Mhm.
the Zorm Collective, their film is a combination of incredible sound design and linking and quilting of disparate images that kind of come together under soft wind shells. Tell us about your film, guys.
So yeah, we met each other in art school.
Hmm.
We now exist for 3 years, and it's like our second film that we make together, where it's really each one of us does everything. Like we have written the film, we have filmed the film, we did the edit, and we also did the sound. All the three of us.
Hmm.
And this film really came together because we were invited for an exposition to make a film about echoes and this transmission of sound and phrases.
Hmm.
And so we were kind of inspired by these two children's games,
Hmm.
like the telephone where you like whisper in each other's ears and then you have to repeat it.
Hmm.
And the other is like where you take like objects that you take with you on a holiday, and that you have like keep on repeating. And for us, it was kind of an interesting way to kind of within a film and within an edit try to like see how transmissions work.
Hmm.
As all three of us made the edit, and as all three of us like gave each other the edit and then worked on the edit, it was interesting to see how, yeah,
what is lost and what is found in transition.
Hmm. I have one question, not really about your film, but the name of your collective. Can you tell us why it's called Zorm?
Yeah, it's an old Dutch word that isn't really in use anymore, but it means something like a constant background noise.
Yeah.
Like murmurs. And we really like the idea of just not being out in your face and like needing to really shout, but just sort of always having something going on, and also paying attention to what is that constant murmur going on the background.
That's quite beautiful. And it fits your film perfectly too. So I wonder if you guys have questions to ask each other. I have plenty, but I'd like to see if you're able to watch each other's films. If you feel free to jump in and ask a question to one of the other filmmakers.
Thank you. I have a question for Jeremy. Jeremy, hi. Really nice to meet you. Finally, I've been seeing your work at different festivals, and I really love this film.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about your chemical process you use, but I was also wondering whether you were familiar with Laura Mulvey and Mark Lewis's film called Disgraced Monuments.
I'm familiar with them, but no, not that film.
Yeah, so they
Write
made this
that down.
amazing film about monuments and at the kind of brink of the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I think they made it around 2013. And your film just made me think of it. But what I wanted to ask you was about the archives of all the protests, because I saw, of course, I recognized some of them in a film, but you had quite a long list.
Yeah.
And I thought that what an amazing archive of resilience, because, that was for the times we live in right now. I think it's such an important political action to take.
Well, I think
Yeah.
my thought originally was that I was just going to use my own footage of both places, but that's when I did start to think so much about that space only becoming that space because of the community that congregated there and transformed it. And that made me start to think about video specifically as a medium and its collective sort of power to document and speak to and represent a space. And so for me, it started to feel like it would be um, almost unethical not to include more visions of this space. And I also thought just even the titles of those videos in the credits just creates this narrative of everything that was going on at that time. And, it's sad, but I think at that time, it really seemed like there was a lot of really positive momentum building.
Mhm.
And then we find ourselves where we are today. And
Yeah.
I think that, we'll return to that hopefully, but it's a process and it's a
Mhm.
collective process. So anyway, I didn't want to claim ownership over over the experience of that place or that place, and I wanted to make sure that I incorporated the found footage and then also credited the links to those films.
Yeah, it's one of those films where I think in all the films, I think that, but where the credits are actually really important because the titles of those videos definitely, prompted that thought I had as well.
I was
But
just at a festival where they cut the film off before the credits started.
Oh my
I
God.
was so
sorry.
mad.
That's so
Yeah.
amateurish. There was once we had an intern who was a new projectionist, and he cut off the credits. I said, no, 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 you got to keep the credits going. And he looked at me in shock, and I said, it's part of the film. You've got to show
Yeah.
the credits.
Yeah.
Other questions for each other? We have a few more minutes to go.
I also really wanted to tell you that I really appreciated how effective the ending of your film was. Uh,
Oh,
Jeremy,
oh, thank
Jeremy,
you.
yes, and just going around and are we back where we started? It,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, or
that
the
echoes what your comment. Yeah.
I watched everybody's films probably 4 or 5 times at least. And I actually really enjoyed all of them. Um, Kamala, I really liked the your structuring of narrative and the space that you left for the audience to sort of find themselves within it. And the use of language is also so poetic about how it opens with this idea of just wanting to go into the wardrobe and put on these clothes. And then later on about, not being able or never being able to have gone to the sea. And then how you close at the end. And I just find it so beautiful. It and haunting, of course, I found that I got because of the all the layers within the film, I feel like each time I watched it, I got more from it. And, by the time I watched it 5 times, I felt like I really knew it.
Wow, thank you. That's real
Beautiful.
dedication. Appreciate it. But yeah, I'll just say quickly that it's interesting because it's such a, personal story, but at the same time, I'll already said it's so universal. So my sound designer, Eka Mordecai, and I, we showed the film to quite a few Eastern European women that were in our vicinity at work or other places. And basically every woman pretty much said, that's my grandmother. That
Yes.
was my
Yes.
grandmother's life. And I think that was really interesting.
My,
That's, yeah.
I'm Polish, part
I
Polish.
was
Yes.
wondering where you, right.
Yes. And I was
Yeah.
thinking the exact same thing.
Mhm.
And I could never get my grandmother to talk to me.
Mhm.
She refused to talk to me and about difficult things that
Very
happened
difficult.
in
Which
Yeah.
is
life.
also common. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could go on about the other films too.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we do have time limitations. There's another Zoom after this one, but I think the idea is with these wonderful experimental films, they're non-narrative, yet they're narrative. There is something that is being said, and the layering of images, the layering of sound in each one of your films is just magical. And I think we were lucky this time because sometimes our experimental film selections are not as strong, but the ones that we received are just very powerful. I mean, Kamala exposes herself, literally exposes herself, and we get inside of her psyche and her grandmother's psyche. And Marie, the same thing. I still wonder, Marie, this woman with holding the bag. I wondered the significance of that, and that we can talk about that later. But there's little things that I think steer you in a certain direction, whether it be the whispering back and forth between Bo, Jeff, and Tesse, and this kind of game that I didn't pick up on right away, but then I realized, yeah, it's like post office, and they're talking to one another, whispering, and we are not, we are participants, but we are still, somewhat not invested in the information, and yet we're still beholden to it, which I think is really very powerful. So, last chance for one more question. I think we can do that. You guys have any other questions? All right.
I
Go
can,
ahead.
I mean, I'll quickly just say that Jeff, Bo, and Tessa, I also really loved your film, and I did get to that idea of sort of like echoing and sort of this like lost in translation kind of idea. And I did watch it multiple times, and I know we hear a lot of wind, but I felt the whole film to be really sort of airy and also very sort of physical in a way, and with the use of the voice and everything else. And I loved floating around in that film, with every time I watched it, and just thought it was fantastic. And Marie, I really liked your film as well. I kept thinking about, 'cause about you being a photographer and the relationship between photography and your film, and perhaps even how it doesn't have sound and how that changes the experience as well. But yeah, I really had a good time the last few days watching everything.
I mean, I think all the films are very meditational. I really felt that watching each and every one of them. All right, folks, we got to do this. I'm going to share screen. Let me see if I can do this without bungling it. I've done thousands of these since the pandemic began. Well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds. And there's always one technical glitch after the other. So let's see if we can do this. All right, so this is our homepage. This normally would have been where everything was. You guys can see this, right? So you would go to njfilmfest.com. That's our homepage. And you can scroll down, and it's actually fairly recently upgraded, which I like because I have a little bit more control and don't have to bother the webmaster every 5 minutes. So when you get to our placeholder here, you click on the tickets and info, and this bounces you to our Eventive website. This is where you buy tickets, but you get all the information about all the films that we're screening. And every single one of these buttons is something that you should push. The schedule button is the most vanilla, and it just has a kind of breakdown of all the screenings divided by a red line. And the program that you guys are part of is the Shorts Program, which is on Friday, June 6th, online for 24 hours starting at 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, USA. And the in-person screenings at 7 p.m. And we have a wonderful array of animation as well as of experimental films from all over the world. And you guys are part of this program. Then you can also go to the tickets section, which has a breakdown by genre. And you guys are at the bottom here with the experimental program. So you can get tickets that way. You just click on the pre-order now, and you have to register if you've never bought a ticket through us, but it takes 20 seconds, and then you can buy tickets that way. You can always go back to the festival site, which is the homepage. You can buy an all-access pass, which is $120. We're doing a ton of programming, so if you buy a pass, you're literally saving half price. And if you want to get individual information about each one of the films, you go to the film guide and you can see that we have Elemental Me here. We have I Was There here, and all the other films are listed, Monument, and of course, Soft Wind Shells. You click on that, you get more information about each film with some pictures. And that's another place you can go visit. The menu page is where you can always generate the same information, but have it on the left-hand side. But the welcome page is primarily where you end up most of the time. You scroll down, you can get general information about how to park, a map to the location for in-person appearances and screenings. And then you can park in university lots for free, but you just have to register beforehand. So I'm going to stop sharing because we've run out of time. But I want to say thank you to all of you for participating, and love your films. Folks, don't miss the Shorts Program on June 6th. You get to see these wonderful experimental films as well as a ton of animation too, and hope you will join us. Thank you so much for everybody joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Al.
Thank you. And
Thanks.
stick around a second. I'll say goodbye to you less formally, but I'm going to stop recording.